Does it feel like every part of your life is divided? Every scenario, every environment, your church, your school, your work, your friends, left, right, conservative, liberal, religious, secular. It seems you always have to take a side. This is a conversation between a progressive Christian and a conservative atheist who happen to be great friends. Welcome to Living on Common Ground.
Do you think if we met today, we would still be friends?
I don't know, but we're friends now.
A mob is no less a mob because they're with you.
Man, so what? We won a few games. And y'all fools think that's something? Man, that ain't nothing, y'all. And you know what else? We ain't nothing either. Yeah, we came together in camp. Cool. But then we're right back here and the world tells us that they don't want us to be together. We fall apart like we ain't a damn bit of nothing, man.
Good morning. It's still morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're on the same time zone, right?
No.
Oh, no, you're on East.
I'm on the beach.
Have you guys done any, like, beach time? What's it like over there?
So right now, it's well, yesterday got sunny in the afternoon. And I walked out on the beach for a little bit. I took a picture of my coffee mug sitting on the beach. And then we drove around. We drove around Virginia Beach, and then we drove up to Buckrow Beach. I don't know. It's north of the James River, and we went out, and there's a beautiful park at Buckrow Beach, and I took a picture of Denise with the pier in the background, and so yeah, we've been just kind of driving around and checking everything out. But
it's just the two of you?
Yeah, just the two of us.
Just a chill hang.
It is
on the beach.
It's really nice. We both have our laptops. We're both working, and in the background you can see this is Brendan and Elaine's brothers. They share it beach house.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So we're right on Virginia Beach. I forget which beach this is. Like you have different. Each beach will have its own little name, but we're south of the main city.
Yeah,
about 15 minutes or so outside. But
cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, so I was watching Jordan Peterson this morning, but you mentioned a Jordan Peterson.
What were you? Were you watching more of the Sermon on the Mount stuff?
Yeah, I'm on lecture 8.
Okay,
I'm getting ready to wrap it up. And then I'm going to move into somebody other than Jordan Peterson just because I'm curious to see who else is on there.
Yeah. Check out my shirt. This is The Rest is History shirt.
Okay. I was trying to see what it is. It looks like it might be, is that, hold on, is that Hannibal riding in to destroy the
Hannibal
Romans?
Barca.
Okay.
He's riding an elephant, which I don't think there is any evidence that he actually ever did, but
never let evidence get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, let's be honest, how much evidence is necessary to teach history?
You just say whatever you want.
I do.
Why not?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, are they going to talk to somebody else who was there?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So give me this Jordan Peterson quote.
Yeah. So, it's a video. I've seen this, and I've seen him talk about this a lot. In different contexts, when the subject of God and religion comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And in this interview, the interviewer asks him, I think the explicit question is, why not? Why does he not really take on the explicit question of the existence of God? And why he doesn't like to answer the question, does God exist?
Mm-hmm.
Or and he really doesn't like to answer the question, do I believe in God? Or and like a lot of people, especially anybody who's a fan of Jordan Peterson, knows that his wife actually, whatever you want to call it, converted to Catholicism like 3 years ago, something like that, publicly, and but not him. And so I thought you would find it interesting because he says, I mean, and I think, and we'll play it, but what he says basically is that the existence of God or not is not reducible to, in his words, to a 2-hour conversation. It's also not, has very little to do with, and this is why I thought you would like it, has very little to do with a platform of beliefs, or basically it doesn't have to do with like a statement or a catechism or something like that, right? That he feels that it's sufficient to say that I live at that it's a completely how does he say it? Well, we're going to play it, but an unknowable metaphysical reality, and therefore it doesn't make any sense to talk about it in kind of frontal lobe, logical, rational ways. That it's sufficient for him to say that he lives as if he believes in God. And that's the end. That's the only way that he can describe it. It made me think about you and your the things you said in the past about how you are more concerned with acting correctly rather than believing correctly. And I, so anyway, I thought that it sounded like something that was up your alley about it.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll pause here for a second and we'll include the clip in the video.
Not take on this question of the existence of God.
Because it's not something to reduce to a soundbite, fundamentally.
But your lectures are 2 hours long.
This is true, but when you're talking about the most important questions that people have ever asked, then 2 hours isn't very long. Apparently, people will watch them. So I'm not prepared to say things in any other way than I've already said them. It isn't obvious what belief means. People think that what they believe is what they say they believe. I don't believe that. I believe that what people believe is what they act out. And so I said, I act as if God exists. That's a sufficient statement as far as I'm concerned. What's the old saying? By their fruits ye shall know them. Same idea, right? It's a matter of action and a matter of commitment. It's not a matter of me parading out my explicit statements about a metaphysical reality that's virtually impossible to comprehend.
Okay. So, a couple thoughts. One is, I'm familiar a little bit with Peterson's response to that question about what do you believe in God? And I've seen video clips before where the person gets really sort of agitated with Peterson. And they're like, no, it's a real simple question. Do you believe in God or do you not believe in God?
Yeah.
And I sympathize with Peterson on that because I don't think that it's a simple question. I think, I was about to say something, it's simple people that make it a simple question. That was me just not being very nice.
No, I mean, it's, it is a, well, I'm sympathetic, or I feel non-judgmental toward people who do see it as a question of belief and statements of belief, because that is the scaffolding, I think, of the culture that we live in, and I do think this is because of living in a post-enlightenment culture. I think that we have an assumption that nothing is real unless I can describe it in words with my kind of frontal lobe cognition. That's where I should be living at all times, right? That I should be able to describe exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing at all times and what the benefit is and what the negative would be if I didn't do it. And if I can't, then it's illegitimate. And that's just, I feel like that is the scaffolding of the culture we live in. And I just don't think that's the reality of the human experience, a big chunk of the human experience.
Yeah, I think that we want to be able to reduce everything into sort of these imaginary binaries. And so a question like, do you believe in God? I think is it's not a productive question. It's the type of question that all it's really trying to do is create. It doesn't allow for nuance. I think a better question, if you wanted to ask somebody, is what do you believe about God? And I think that can open up all kinds of conversations, because then you can have a conversation with someone who doesn't believe anything about God, but they can describe that to you, right? So if I were to ask you, for example, do you believe in God? That's really sort of a yes or no question. But if I ask you, well, what do you believe about God? Even if you don't believe about God, you could talk to me. We could enter in a really big conversation about that. And I think that that's kind of what Peterson, I'm obviously you'd have to ask him, but I think that's kind of what he's getting at. And as he talks, I think about Paul Tillich, and how Paul Tillich will talk about, God is not a being, but the ground of being. And for me, that's an extremely important part of my theology. So if you were to ask me, do you believe in God, Jeff? I may ask you a question back and be like, well, what do you mean when you say God?
Mm-hmm.
So I also, right. And I thought
go
ahead.
I think that is, to me, that is the obvious question. That is the obvious clarifying question that comes up if somebody asks directly, do you believe in God? I'm going to need to have maybe a 3-day long conference on a discussion of what you mean when you say God before I could get close to describe. And the issue there, which I have this problem with lots of ideology and these kind of simplistic questions, or not simplistic questions, but questions that come down to a binary point. And that is that if you ask the clarifying question back, that is a signal that, they're not, then you don't believe, clearly you don't believe in God.
Right.
Or, and this is just an example of it, do you believe in God? This could be anything. Like you could say, let me go to another one. Do you believe in systemic oppression? I'm going to want to have a 3-day long conference discussing with you what the heck you mean by systemic oppression before I can ever come close to giving you an answer for that. And as soon as I ask the clarifying question, what do you mean by that? And I want to, maybe impeach your sources, and I want to get into like what you mean by that. As soon as I start asking that question, someone who has asked me that question knows that I'm not on their team, right? Or at least that's going to be the impression back.
Sure.
Is, you're just trying to muddy the waters, right? Similar to how, Sam Harris said about Peterson, you can answer the question, did Jesus rise from the dead or not? You can just say yes or no. You don't have to have a 9-hour long conversation. And Peterson's like, I don't know what to tell you. I do need to have a 9-hour long conversation before we can get close to it.
Right. So the other thing you mentioned, well, and then I'll come back to another thought I had, but another thing that you mentioned was this idea where, well, something that I've said is, I'm not really as concerned about what you believe about God, as much as I am concerned about, I don't care, because beliefs only matter insofar as determining what you do. That's sort of the thing, right? That's something that's really important and part of like all of my thinking.
Yeah.
So, and then, Brendan actually pointed out to me one time, because you actually do care what people think, what people believe.
Of course.
Right. And I do care what people believe insofar as it determines what you do. Right. So, but I think that,
well, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Well, I was just going to say, but like having certain, doctrinal statements about God, I don't care. Like, I don't care what your doctrinal statements are about God. What I care about is, does your belief in God, your existential beliefs, does it help you? Does it transform you into a better human being? That's sort of my where I would say I do care about your beliefs.
Well, I mean, what I guess I'll push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
In my experience with it, and I think that I don't know if this is what Brendan was getting at, but I think I would agree with him on this if he agrees with me, which is I've heard you talk about particular theologies and kind of and say, well, and that's bad theology, right? And be concerned that people are interpreting scriptures incorrectly, and that and I wonder if when you're, and this is we all do this, but I wonder if when you're again thinking about it cognitively, and you're kind of working it out, that in that sense, in that moment, yeah, you're like, yeah, I don't actually care which way you think or how you believe, but just if it makes you a better person or makes you act better. But that when you're not in your frontal lobe kind of conscious, if there's an irking that you feel, if someone is espousing something you feel like is incorrect theology.
So I think it depends on how they're espousing it.
Okay.
And then that goes back to like determining how you do it or what you do. So like if the way that you interpret the scriptures or the way that you understand God causes you or makes you feel as if you have to aggressively defend it, then that's the problem I have. It's not the belief itself. It's with the way that you feel the need to aggressively defend it, or that if it causes you to well, one of the things that bothers me a lot is when a person has a set of doctrinal beliefs and part of that belief system is, if you don't adhere to these, then you're damned to hell or something like that. I think that and I again, this goes all the way back to like how it's more complicated than that, right? Because like you've pointed out to me, you're actually a little more gracious to that position than I am, because your experience with your grandparents has caused you to understand that when someone does that, often it's because they care about you. Right. Sure. And so if you truly believe that having the correct beliefs, the doctrinal beliefs, keeps you from going to hell, and you believe in hell and you love somebody, then why wouldn't you want to continue to press upon them the importance of having that particular set of beliefs? And so I get that too. All I'm saying is that if the way that you read the Bible, if the way that you understand God causes you to be a jerk, then I would say that I have a problem with that theology. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, that's fair, and that's fair. I think that's fair. I think you know, it a lot of different ways of approaching religion can make it can come out as being a jerk, or being judgmental, condescending, uh, hypocritical. I definitely think that obvious. I mean, that's obvious that is you know that's why there's so many, I think, so many admonitions in religious scriptures, not just in Christian religious scriptures, but lots of different religious scriptures against these kinds of what I would see as like human nature actions. I think it's normal to be exclusionary. I think it's normal to be judgmental and to be filled with wrath and lust. And I think these are the reasonably expected states to find a human in. I think, and that's why I think philosophy and religion have I think they do have a really important place in humanity, but also I think that's part of the reason why they are just integrated into the broader human experience, because you're always going to have that other side of the coin. As you're acting wrathfully in wrath, you have this kind of feeling of maybe I shouldn't be, or maybe this is causing a problem, or I'm getting, this is dangerous, or you can feel the feeling of catharsis from acting in your wrath, and in the moment of the catharsis, know that you've spent something of your soul, for lack of a better term. But yeah, and I mean, I see that in lots of different areas. I guess the thing that I liked that I have liked about the way that Peterson describes it is, if you still today, if you ask me, Lucas, do you believe in God? I have to say, I have, most likely I have to say no, I don't. And I can still describe that. I can still go, no, I don't believe in a theistic God, one with a character, and I don't have any reason to believe in a deistic God, one without a character. Okay, great. Lucas, you go to church like every week, couple times a week sometimes. You take communion. You made sure that when you're out of town on Ash Wednesday that you found a service to go do an Ash Wednesday. What? Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
I went to actually our old church back in California, and it was nice. I didn't know I was going to, actually. So the last time I was in town on a Sunday, I had told our old pastor that that I was going to be there, and I was going to go attend service there. And so he had a heads up, and so then we went out for lunch afterward. This time I didn't. I had just realized that I was missing the Ash Wednesday service. I realized that like Tuesday night, and so I was like, man. And then I was like, well, there's a bunch of. I bet I could find a Catholic mass somewhere, and they'd probably. I mean, I wouldn't take communion, but I could still attend the service. And then I was like, oh no, our old church, they do a Ash Wednesday service. So I showed up, but I hadn't told him. So then I walked up to get the ashes, and he was like, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to be here. Anyway, so that all being said, it really speaks to my experience to say I live my life as if I believed.
Mhm.
I live my life, not as if I believed, actually, is the wrong way. I live my life as if it's real.
Mhm.
That's what I think is that's probably accurate
Okay.
for me. Even though if you press me, I don't believe it. And part of this is because, and I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but part of this is because I do think that the vast majority of what drives us, like 95% of it, what drives us is unconscious.
Mm.
And the more invisible something is to me that is inside of me, the more it drives me.
Mm.
And so I want to participate in this human experience of this kind of unknowable mystery, submitting myself to that. Even though I don't have a cognitive belief in it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like if I'm sitting down, I'm talking about it, I can't get myself there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm in a worship service, it's much better if it's somber, serious for me. Then I feel as if I am connecting to something that is mysterious and deeper and ancient.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, some of the things you said that resonate with me is the unknowable.
Mm-hmm.
That, and then there's also this. So there's this unknowable, and then you mentioned this idea that you might be in the middle of doing something, but then inherently, like inside of you, for whatever, it feels like it might be not the right thing. Right? I forget exactly how you worded that. Okay, so all kinds of thoughts. One is, and I can't say the exact quote, unfortunately, but Epictetus talked about this idea of when you're faced with a temptation, ask yourself, is the moment of joy going to be greater than the guilt that you feel afterwards, right? And how long will you feel the guilt compared to the momentary joy? All right. So I think this is also then the story of Genesis.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, and so that's, forget the whole, forget historical whatever. The story of the is that there are two natures to us. There's this one nature that seems to be going against nature. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have an internal nature.
Well, wait, hang on.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is going against nature?
I think that the moment that I am, okay, I just finished the sermon series where I was talking about the difference between a grasping and a giving.
Yeah.
I think that the grasping is going against the greater nature.
Okay, that's okay. All right.
And what I'm saying is the greater nature of reality itself. And so there is this idea that there's a metaphysical unknowable. That and so when I talk about sort of this unknowable part of existence, the thing that seems to be holding it together and moving it in a particular trajectory, that's what I'm talking about when I say the word God. So I can't get behind the idea of a divine being that has human characteristics that exists somewhere out there and that is somehow creating things in the exact same way that I sit down when I would create art, right? I don't see that, but I do see that there seems to be there's something that's moving things in a particular direction. Again, you get into the idea that how do we make sense of negentropy as opposed to entropy? Because according to physics, if everything is energy, then everything should just be burning up and burning out. But negentropy is that but that it's also calling and creating into what's the word? My mind just went blank. When a complex, there's a complexity that's being created too that doesn't make sense if it's all entropy. So there's neg entropy.
Okay.
So, I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this, Lucas? Help me out.
You've got the two natures. You've got
Yes. Okay. So I do think that there seems to be a design where everything at some point will move towards it contributes to flourishing. Now, it could end up that once we hit that point, entropy takes over and it's all done. But I don't know. Like the fact that the flowers need bees and bees need flowers. We need trees and trees need animals that are creating carbon dioxide and so that it can take and create oxygen, and like it all seems to be working together, right? And the Stoics would talk about that being the logos. Christians talk about that and use the word God. I think, and I know that people would get mad at me and be highly offended, but I think that when I look at physics, the word being used is energy. And I do think that there are two natures, and there's the one that leads to flourishing of everything, including me. And then there's the one that I think is flourishing, but actually ends up being very destructive when it's a self-focused flourishing. So let me circle back around to something else. Is that all right? All right. Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
When he does talk about God, he talks about the transcendental values, right? But he calls them the values of the absolute,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And he talks about truth, beauty, and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And when he
Because
talks,
God is the ideal, it's the absolute ideal.
it is the ideal. It is, which is a little different than what I'm describing. But I also think that within the design of when I talk about flourishing, I am talking about the ultimate ideal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he talks a little bit about that in his lecture on the Sermon on the Mount. He talks about God being heaven. Actually, he talks about heaven being the ideal that we strive for, and hell being the complete opposite of it.
Right.
Which I think is a beautiful way of thinking about it. But that's again, so this idea that truth, beauty, justice are the values of the absolute. So when you're talking about God, we're talking about how all of those things work together, and which of course is then why I immediately in my notepad. This is what I pulled up, by the way.
Your notes that you're taking in your college course.
No, this actually goes all the way back. This goes back further than that. But no, some of the notes in here are the one that I'm taking with this is just my journal for the last several months. And I don't know why I have a circle, Epicurus, with a question mark underneath all of that. But
I know that I have talked to you about Epicureanism as one of my favorite Greek philosophies, one of my favorite Greek philosophies.
Okay.
And I know that when I brought it up the last time, you had said like that would be something that you wanted to look into.
So that's probably
maybe
why.
That was the reason.
Maybe so. I did buy a book because my only exposure right now to Epicureanism is the Stoics having things that they don't like about it.
Yeah, they were competing,
especially Seneca,
for sure.
Yeah, I was reading Seneca's letters, and he mentions Epicurean school.
The argument against Epicureanism is almost always that I see that it just leads to hedonism and unseriousness, which in my view is just a complete misunderstanding of what the tenets were. But whatever.
So back to Hold on.
Well, I've got a couple of thoughts about your
Okay.
what you had talked
Yeah,
about.
but let me finish this thought.
Okay, yeah.
So you mentioned that what is it? You can't get behind a belief in God as a deist belief of God or a what?
Theist. I
Theist.
definitely can say I do not have any belief in a theistic God, a God with character. And I don't see any reason to believe in a deistic God, a God with no character.
Okay.
The uncreated creator, the first cause, blah blah blah.
Sure. So the way I believe and what I believe about God, it doesn't matter to me about either one of those statements. I'm not even sure that I care that you would use even when you say, but maybe I live my life as if there were one, right? Or something like that, however you worded that. I'm not even sure that that's a necessary statement for me. What I care about is that people order their lives in such a way, try to live their lives in such a way that they're contributing to the flourishing of all things, including other human beings. And if your theology does that, then I think in my categories, that's a good theology. If your theology doesn't do that, then that would be a bad theology. If your science does that, right? Whatever category you want to put it, if your philosophy does that, then I think it's a good philosophy. Because I think that whether we're talking about philosophy, we're talking about science, we're talking about theology, it's all just different ways of talking about the same reality.
Okay.
All right. So now tear me apart.
No, I want to go back to what I'd made notes about is your the quote from Epictetus that you had talked about.
Yeah, the one I mangled.
About temptation. I don't think you mangled it. I mean, I don't know the quote, so maybe you did. But
I got the basic essence of it correct.
Yeah. Here's my couple of thoughts. The process of asking yourself anything, that's metacognitive, thinking about your thoughts. And that is all frontal lobe stuff that I was talking about before. And how I envision the world is that kind of ask yourself if this is going to be more of a benefit than what I'm going to feel later, trying to cognitively put yourself in the future of yourself, right? Like you've described as your whiteboard in your kitchen. Discipline is a gift to my future self, right? This kind of thinking is a fundamental life hack. It's like magic. It is, it really, I do think the more you can do it, separates your life into a path that will be more, however you want to say it, enjoyable, fulfilled, more secure, blah, 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 blah. It's where things like delayed gratification come from. It's where things like, you could think of it in your relationships with other people. You're thinking about, okay, what would actually be the best way for me to respond to my child who is over the last week or so making me feel, this is not my children, but just an example, making me feel resentful or disrespected or what, right? And instead of just reacting, you kind of think about it, you try to imagine it. And as Jordan Peterson talks about, when you do that, what you're actually doing is metaphorically killing off versions of yourself that will not accomplish your goal. You think through those and they don't accomplish your goal, so you kill them. So you don't have to die. He talked about that this great thing about thinking is that you don't have to die yourself from some stupid idea that you're going to have because you can think about the idea ahead of time, right? Okay. All of that, I 100% am on board that it's a life hack and it really does separate the population, I think. In my opinion, I think the vast majority of humans, 80% maybe, just react through life, okay? I'm not actually putting a judgment on that. I'm saying I think it's just the reality.
Okay.
And I think if you can think about your life, it will help separate your life. Now, having said that, I still don't think that that is where I live. That is where I live 5% of my time. But if you were looking at a picture, if you were looking at a painting that had 95% blue paint on it and had 5% red paint on it, and you said, tell me what color that painting is, you can only tell me which one of them, you'd say it was a blue painting. You wouldn't say, oh, that's mostly a red painting. Or you wouldn't say like, well, I think the red is really, that's just as important as the rest of it. That's just it. No, it would be a blue painting. And I think that we live our life, even people who try to have these times of really thinking about what we're doing and how we're living, I still think that that is a very small part of our experience. And I don't think that's where our conscience comes from. I think our conscience not consciousness, but conscience. Yeah, with an N. Conscience comes from something precognitive. And, so again, that's why I, like the idea of, well, this is just, this is how I move through the world is if this ideal exists and I'm striving for it. I will say also, I do agree with the two natures idea. I just think the real nature is the grasping one. I think that the giving one is the one we should strive for, but I don't think that it is more fundamental than the grasping one. I definitely think personally that the grasping one is the most fundamental and that we are fighting against it.
Yeah, so your painting, the blue one is the red one is the giving, right? And
sure.
The red one is the one that's actually going to lead to Kant's categorical imperative, right? The universal moral law. And I have a note here. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay. So Kant advocated acting in ways that, if universally followed, would result in the best outcome for all.
Yes,
okay.
I am aware of that. Yes.
Okay. So it's just known as Kant's categorical imperative.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say if you're looking at the blue painting, right, and it has a red dot, the red dot's the most important part of the blue painting.
Because
it's the thing that is different, and it's the thing that has the potential to change the entire thing. The difference between just a blue painting and a blue painting with a red dot is the red dot.
Yeah, I might be able to get behind that that's the most important part of it. I just wouldn't call it I wouldn't call it the more real part of it. I would separate those out.
I would not either. I wouldn't say it was the more real part. I wouldn't say that either one of those, the grasping or the giving, I don't think either one of them are more real. I'm not talking about.
I thought you were saying that the logos, this thing that
they both really exist. But what I think is that when you look at the way that, and I see where the confusion is because I'm using the word reality, right? But the way that existence seems to be, I'm trying to avoid using the word designed, right?
Sure.
But the telos of existence, of of all things seems to be working together for the flourishing of the entire organism. And that we have two very real natures that we're struggling with every day. The one that goes against that and the one that aligns with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that little red dot that allows us the opportunity to reflect, to align with it. And I think, though, the fact that because we have both those natures is where we struggle. Because I don't know for sure, but I look at like
I do want to clarify. Wait, I do
Mhm.
want to clarify one thing though.
Mhm.
When I describe that picture,
Mhm.
I really actually, yeah, and I think I do want to step back here for a second because I was not meaning to describe, and I think that I did actually say this, but that's not really what I meant. I don't mean that the blue represents like the negative, selfish,
Mhm.
bad, whatever, and the red represents the good, altruistic, whatever.
Mhm.
What I really meant in that was that the blue represented unconscious
Mhm.
motivation and how I go through my life
Mhm.
unconsciously, and that the red represents anytime I'm conscious about something.
Well, yeah, I have no problem with that either, because I also would say I wouldn't want to use good and bad as the categories to describe them,
Sure.
because I don't think it's good or bad. I think one's helpful and one's less helpful.
Well, I'm just saying that I think that in the blue, which is the unconscious,
Mhm.
that I think is 95% of my experience,
Mhm.
I have urges that are what some might consider altruistic.
Mhm.
And then I have other urges that are, selfish
Mhm.
or whatever. It's just that I've never changed my motivation through conscious thought, I guess is, do you see what I'm saying? Like my conscious thought is such a small part of my experience that I can't imagine changing my motivations, through any kind of belief system or thinking or anything like that.
Hmm.
It seems to me like my motivations influence my thought, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Seems like.
Yeah, I think this is a place of disagreement for us, because I would never tell you about your own experiences,
Go ahead.
right?
Whatever.
But it seems to
I'm a
me,
big boy.
it seems to me like you may be downplaying some of that. I think that it may not be immediate, but I think that the more time you spend processing, like the metacognitive, eventually it almost feels like it's just a natural response.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A couple things pop into my mind, both Seneca. One is all cruelty springs from weakness. And so,
Sure.
right, I think that that's important. And then the other thing too is that everything hangs on one's thinking. A man is unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. And so the more that we can think about things, it will change the way that we next time respond. And I think that it does eventually become a natural response to you.
Mm-hmm.
A silly example, I talked about the time that I had that really uncomfortable experience at that deli. Remember that? Do you remember me telling you that story, right? And then I had to close my eyes. All right. So recently I was in the woods and I had this overwhelming experience of feeling completely connected to trees.
Uh-huh.
I didn't stop and think that for myself.
Yeah.
But because of all the time I've spent thinking about logos and energy and all that, that naturally became an experience that I had. So, all right. Did we we identified some place where we disagreed. Do we have any common ground?
Yeah, I think that I am on board with the idea that the the experience of, well, your belief system, your belief platitudes, that's prejudicial. Your statements of belief are only good insofar as they can make for conversation fodder. It's not really what your life is. You know, your life is all the constellation of, you know, actions and emotions and experiences and everything that you have. And if you know, that's what's I think that's what's important. I think that's probably a place we're very, very similar on.
I think so too. And
some common ground.
Through this conversation, I have come to another realization, this conversation today, even though it seemed like at times we were wandering all over the place, which we probably were. But I think that, like, the specific details about God are not important to me. But my understanding of the reality that I might describe as God are. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. No, I get it.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Cool, man.
Thank you for listening to Living on Common Ground. Please follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends. You can also find a link to our social in the description. The more people we have living on common ground, the better the world will be.